Good evening and welcome to the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education meeting, our regular meeting for January 27th, 2025. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Gladly. Mrs. Burton.
Here.
Mrs. Frank.
Here.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. McFarland.
Here.
Mrs. Acosta is here. President Bradford.
Here, and we have a quorum. Item 2, Mrs. Acosta, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Again, welcome everybody to our meeting. If you are at home viewing our meeting and you would like a copy of tonight's agenda, you may go over to the www.livoniapublicschools.org. Hover over the board tab, look down for agendas, and you'll find our agenda for this evening. If you're here tonight, the agendas are out to our left, out at the door. So we welcome you tonight. We have a great meeting in store, lots of things happening, and we will get started right away at item number 3. Communications, and we're going to start up with 3A, the robotics program update, and we have Mrs. Stacy Jenkins helping us out tonight. Thank you.
It would help if I turn that on. Good evening, President Bradford, members of the board, Superintendent Oquist. Tonight, it is my pleasure to shine a spotlight on one of the district's points of pride, and that being our robotics programs. So we're kind of between seasons right now. The high school season is just kicking off. The middle school and the elementary seasons are wrapped up, so we're going to offer a full update, an update and a preview. Okay? Joining us tonight, we welcome Isolina Carlini, right over here to my right. Ms. Carlini is the robotics coordinator for the district, and Kelly Doomer, who is, she assists with all things robotics. She's everywhere. And we've got some high school students, Sean and Catherine, thank you. I was going to have them introduce themselves, but they mentioned what their name. They told me their names earlier, and I just boop. So I'd like to offer a quick perspective on our robotics programs before we hear from our guests. Livonia Public Schools' original first robotics team, the Livonia Warriors, was established in 2009, if you can believe that, 16 years ago. While the Warriors team, number 2832, is still going strong, we also have the Livonia Tyros. Tyros, T-Y-R-O-S, stands for, it's a Latin word meaning young soldier or new recruit. So the Tyros is sort of a rookie team made up of freshmen and sophomores, but they're definitely a force to be reckoned with on the competition field. All of the, both high school teams are made up of students from Churchill, Franklin, and Stevenson high schools, and we look forward to hearing a preview of their upcoming competition season. Also, a note of perspective on how much the robotics programs have grown over the past 16 years. LPS now has 3 middle school teams and 8 lower elementary teams. What began as the Livonia Warriors has grown into a district-wide program, including the following teams. Starting with the elementary, first Lego League. And if you haven't seen one of these in action, it's really, really neat. The teams in our Lego League are the Buchanan Robo Bears, the Cleveland Robo Eagles, the Grant Robo Gators, the Hoover Robo Rockets, the Kennedy Robo Stars, the Niji Iro Robo Cranes, and 2 brand new teams coming on board this spring, the Hayes Robo Huskies and the Webster Robo Cats. I've emailed 2 slideshows to you because we're going to show some slides, but they're really heavy on the verbiage, so I figured you want to take a little bit of time later on to read each slide through, but we are going to show those. The Lego League teams are, of course, in addition to our first robotics middle school teams. So we've got the Emerson Robo Eagles, the Frost Robo Falcons, and the Holmes Robo Hawks. With the 2 high school teams, there are now 13 robotics teams operating in Livonia Public Schools. We owe the vast majority of the kudos to our first guest, Iselina Carlini, who is the brainchild of growing our LPS robotics programs. She has also worked hard over the years by securing an awesome team of mentors and sponsors. Ms. Carlini will briefly recap the elementary Lego League and middle school seasons for us. So welcome, Ms. Carlini.
Thank you. Actually, the Webster Robo Cats are not a new team. We only have one new team this year, and that's the Hayes Robo Huskies. They're so adorable. But the Webster team is a returning team. They were one of our original teams 3 years ago. So Webster's has been with us all of those years. So here we have the Buchanan Robo Bears. At their competition this year, they placed 5th out of 30 teams. And one of the Robo Bears said, "We showed good sportsmanship and grit." So I thought that was a nice quote. And our next team is the Cleveland Robo Eagles. They placed 13th out of 30 teams and also won an impressive award for robot design. The Grant Robo Gators did a fantastic job learning this season and learned how to problem solve code on the field. All Robo Gators said that they plan to return next year. The Hoover Robo Rockets placed 11th out of 30 teams in the competition and secured first place in the innovation project. Hoover Robo Rockets are a dedicated group. Getting that first place for that innovation project, I'm just going to pause here really quickly to explain that in FLL, there is a competition sector of the program, and then there is an educational sector of the program, which is entitled an innovation project. And students will reach out to authors and do research and learn something about the game that they're playing and do a presentation where they do some public speaking. And we really need to be proud of those Hoover Robo Rockets. The Kennedy Robo Stars placed 4th out of 30 teams. They shone brightly and won second place in the innovation project. So we got 2 first and second places there. The Nijiero Robo Cranes had a fantastic experience during their meetings and at their competition. Nijiero Robo Cranes are especially excited about technical skills and collaboration. We have a new team this year led by Scott Code. He is a custodian at Hayes, and he has taken this on, and he's learning every time his meetings are on Thursday, and the Warriors go there and help him out. He's a little nervous at first, but he's becoming quite confident. And the students at the Hayes School are very excited. And we have congratulations to the Buchanan Robo Bears, the Cleveland Robo Eagles, Grant Robo Gators, Hoover Robo Rockets, Kennedy Robo Stars, Nijiero Robo Cranes, and the Webster Robo Cats and the Hayes Robo Huskies will be competing in the spring of 2025. Next, we have a little information on our middle school teams. The Emerson Robo Eagles, a tough little team and quite talented. They competed in 4 competitions and ranked high enough to be the 4th seeded alliance captain for ELIMS, but were actually picked by the 3rd captain to be a partner. They accepted that challenge and they made it to the semifinals. Go Robo Eagles. The Frost Robo Falcons, superstars, played in 2 district competitions, won the Ann Arbor district, won the Rochester district, right at the top. In addition to winning the Inspire Award, also won the Think Award, but the best was qualifying for state. They played through the semifinals and just by a few points ended up 4th at the state championship. and they are currently placed 20th in the world.
Wow.
And that's a lot of FTC teams. The Holmes RoboHawks competed in 4 competitions this season at the Metro Detroit League meet. They won the Control Award for impressive programming. They did some fancy stuff with a color sensor that was pretty cool. We also have a brand new little program that is called the LPS RoboRaptors Club. We had a number of students that could not get on a competition team, so the Livonia Warriors decided to teach them about robotics. And so this is a non-competition program. The club is low-cost, non-competition experience for middle schoolers seeking an orientation to competition robotics. We had a lot of 7th graders, and they really enjoyed it, and they never missed the meetings. So they had a good time. We even bought them a cake. And that's the wrap-up for elementary and middle school. I'm going to give way to our impressive impact team, and they're going to tell you about the Warriors.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Greenwald. I'm a captain on the Warriors team, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our off-season that we completed just before this early January when we started the new season. So in our off-season, we attended 6 competitions. 2 of them were all-girls competitions that focus on encouraging more girls and women to go into STEM and engineering fields. We played in playoffs in nearly every single one of these competitions. During the summer, we also hosted the Infinity Challenge, which was helped by a grant from the City Foundation, and it was a 6-week program for students at the Park Life for the Autistic School, the Garfield Skills Center, and the Johnson Center. And in this program, they spent 6 weeks building a small robot, just like our other FRC robots, that in the last week they got to show off at their big exhibition in a obstacle course that all the students were given the opportunity to drive the robot through. And the parts of the obstacle course were built by different teams on and through the Livonia robotics program, such as the Tyros and the Warriors. And probably one of the fan favorite obstacles at this was a small teeter-totter that was a little bit tricky, but it seemed to be a big hit with all the students as they got to drive over it. And then there were other ones as well. In addition, at the end of July, during our summer, we got a different grant where we were able to host a 3-week-long study for students on the team that explored more into cameras and vision and how those can be utilized during the robotics season. We looked at how it can pick up different things, the information it can tell us, how we can use that to better the robot and our competitive side. Yeah.
So this year, on December 12th, the Livonia Warriors hosted our annual Family Engineering Night at Livonia Churchill. We were so proud to host this event. We had a total of 20 different families attend, which totaled to about 60 people. We really enjoyed teaching local elementary school students the joys of STEM and perhaps pursuing a career in engineering. This year, the Livonia Warriors are also excited to participate in Rescape, this year's game. This game focuses around 2 main game elements, the algae and the coral. The algae is basically a big rubber ball that measures in 12 inches in diameter. So it's pretty big. And then the coral are PVC pipes that are cut out. Our goal this year is to basically decorate the reef, which is this big structure that looks exactly like a coral reef, and we have to put the algae and the coral on it to score points. But that's not all. There's also the cage, which is there's the low cage and the high cage, and the Livonia Warriors have to figure out a way to hang on both the high and the low cage to score as many points as possible. We're super, super excited to do this. Our game revealed was on January 4th. We really enjoyed watching it and strategizing to think of the best robot possible, and we ended it by enjoying some cake.
We do love our Costco cake. Um, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we have done in this build season. So this week is the start of week 4 of our 8-week build season. So we're hoping to get a lot done this week. It's going to be a very productive week. So we've built the frame, basically the bottom base level part of the robot. And now we're working on the elevator, which is going to help us reach up our mechanisms to the height it needs to in order to score on the reef. And we're also hoping to get the bumpers, which we do tend to need a lot, done this week.
So once we're done constructing the best robot possible, we will be attending 2 competitions for sure. The first one is our Kettering competition, which will be hosted on March 6th through the 8th. And then our second competition will be hosted at our very own Livonia Churchill High School on March 27th through 29th. We are going to be as prepared as possible and make the best possible robot so that we have the opportunity to possibly go to the state and world level. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much for being here and taking valuable time out of your build to join us tonight and to offer not only our Board of Education but our entire community this exciting update. So thank you and good luck with your season. Best wishes. And that will do it for our robotics update.
Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. Does anybody have any comments or questions for the robotics team this evening? Mrs. Burton.
It's just exciting for those of us who have been around for several years to have watched this program grow. I mean, it's grown nationally, statewide, et cetera, but Livonia has got a terrific program, and to see it expand to our very youngest, to our very oldest learners who are part of Livonia Public Schools is just really exciting. So kudos to the entire group, the leaders, the sponsors, and the students who are really the best advocates for the success of the program. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Mrs. Oquist.
Thank you, President Bradford. Did you know I would want to say a few things?
Of course.
about,
My head just turns that way naturally, I know.
Thank you. Well, first of all, that was an amazing update. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, both Mrs. Carlini and to our student leaders. I love that cake is a theme. So as much as I love robots, I do love that you often have cake as part of your celebrations. That's a great idea. One of the things that struck me when you were talking, especially with some of the grant awards that you won, was the way you focus on community impact. And I know that that's a really important part of what you do in robotics, especially with the Warriors, that one of the things you do is look to extend that sphere of influence beyond just your team and really think about how can you bring in the greater community. So, you know, from being at Bounce Back every year, you guys are there every year to greet our kiddos. It is always one of the favorite events there. It is a little bit exhausting for those of us adults that participate, but you do a great job with that. And the ways that you hold camps for our kids and bring in our students who may not be part of an official league or a program, but can still have that opportunity to have that spark ignited. Which I think is a great connection to what's happening in our classrooms with Project Lead the Way and the STEM options they'll have as they get older. So I just want to encourage you to continue to keep that community mindset because that's one of the things that I think makes our robotics team so special, is that it is not only the build season and the competition season, but in the off season, how much you do to impact other children and other students in our district. So we appreciate that. And just curious about the grant awards. Is that something that you seek out? Is that something that First Robotics sends to you and you have the opportunity to apply for those? How do you do that?
Yeah, I probably should speak to that.
Sure.
Usually, I'm always looking for them, you know, and whenever we can find one, then, you know, we get an opportunity to apply for those grants.
Sure.
The Ford Vision grant was a $7,200 grant
Wow.
that we received to buy cameras and infrared, various pieces of equipment, and just very expensive equipment that we would never have an opportunity to explore with. So when I filled out that grant, We got a couple of our engineers to do all the technical pieces, and one of our lead mentors then ushered that through the Ford system, and we got that $7,200 grant. And then we received a $1,200 grant from the City Foundation for the Infinity Challenge, because we originally wanted them to take a robot, take a small robot back to their schools, but that was just too much money. So we just built one, but they were really happy to just share it among the 3 places and use it on the field. But we have some designs on maybe making a better plan for that for the future, and let those students with special needs have those opportunities. Robotics is a very expensive thing.
Sure, sure. So thank you for that, Mrs. Carlini, and we know what an integral part you are to each of these teams and everything they do, as are the folks we have. If you are involved with robotics, please stand and be recognized in the crowd. You do so much to help our kids. I know, especially in season, how much time and effort you're each putting in to our mentors, to our volunteers, to our business partners. We are so grateful, and our students are the beneficiaries of that. So we are so proud of you. This publication is amazing. Thank you for sharing it with us. It makes us so proud to see what you're doing. And thank you, President Bradford, and to the board for hosting robotics this evening. It's always wonderful to have an update from you. So congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, Mrs. Oquist.
Of course.
Yep. And again, on behalf of the board, we thank you for being here tonight and giving us the update. And I can't wait to read the magazine. It got on our desk, we came here, and these guys are all looking through it, and I'm saying, what are you guys looking at right now? So exciting. So thank you so much for being here. All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to item 3B. This is an exciting time, and before I do that, I have one announcement is we will be taking a break after item 3D, the School Board Recognition Month, but I do know robotics, I believe, need to leave. They have to go on to other things this evening, so thank you for being here. And item 3B, for everybody else who's left, I just want to thank you to all who are here to help celebrate our next item, which is item 3B, our ceremonial oaths of office of board members elect. So as you know, our board, 4 of us were re-elected to the board this past November, and we took our oath of office in the at the board office upstairs, but now we are doing our ceremonial one. So we have some guests here that are going to help swear us in this evening, and I guess we're going to go ahead and begin. Mrs. Genta's going to, no, Mrs. Genta's not. Mrs. No one is. I guess I am, right?
You are, Karen.
I guess I'm doing that. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead for the oath of office. And the first person up for swearing in is Dave McFarland. And this evening, we have Mr. Rob Drzwicki that is going to do the ceremonial swearing in. So thank you, Rob, for being here this evening.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time since I've been in this room. I used to spend a lot of time down here. It's kind of nice to come across the street and hang out for a bit, so thanks for having me.
All right.
I'll try and break this up so we won't stumble over any words.
All right.
I'll repeat after me. I, Dave McFarland,
I, Dave McFarland,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Member of the Board of Education
of the office of Member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools District,
of the Livonia Public School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the absolute best of my ability.
I have to add Think globally and act locally, Globey.
We want to congratulate Dave. He's a brand-new board member, new on this year, and I believe his family is in the audience there. Would you like to say a few things, or?
I am so thankful to the community for feeling me worthy to vote for me into this office. I take it with the utmost responsibility, and I will do my absolute best to serve our community, obviously first and foremost with our schools, our most valuable students, our most valuable citizens, our students and young people, and obviously the teachers, support staff, and administrators that are there to uphold Livonia as one of the preeminent districts in Michigan. And I take this with honor and grace and look forward to serving as best I absolutely can. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Wow, you did such a nice job. You spoke for all of us tonight. Thank you. I guess next.
Mrs. Bradford, you're up
Yeah,
next.
next, I'm up next.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Board. I just want to let you know, this evening, my good friend Kara Clementi's here. She's a Wayne County Commissioner currently, and I guess for the past, this is my third term, so you've been a Wayne County Commissioner
2 years.
2 years, on 2 terms. So Kara's here. We went to school together, we taught together, and we're just longtime friends. I'm so grateful that you're here tonight to swear me into my 3rd term.
Okay.
All right, here I go.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. I state your name.
I, Karen Bradford,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of member of the Board of Education
of the office of member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability. I also will do my absolute best to serve the district in any capacity that I can, and I am just grateful to the voters that they chose me to sit another 4 years and get another 4 years here at Livonia Public Schools, the best school district in the state. So thank you.
Mrs. Frank, if you want to come up.
Next up is Crystal Frank, and she is going to be sworn in by our good board member, Colleen Burton. And her family is surrounding her, which is lovely. Thanks for being here.
They all do ceremonially anyway. Yeah. I, Crystal Frank,
I, Crystal Frank,
affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of member of the Board of Education
of member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you to Colleen for swearing me in. She is the mother of the Board of Education, and she has taught all of us all that we know. And so I'm so grateful for you to do the oath of office. And I just want to introduce my husband, Lucas, my son, Carson, and my daughter, Addison. Logan and Kaylee are at Purdue right now, and so they're not here, but I wanted to also thank the voters of Livonia for entrusting me with this responsibility, and I will also do the very best of my ability. Thanks so much.
Next up We have Madeline Acosta, and I believe she's, would like her family to come up and surround her. I guess I didn't ask my family to come up, but.
Do you want to do it again? We could have.
No, I think he's good. Thank you, John, and my friends Linda and Dave for being here tonight. Okay, Mrs. Acosta is up with, again, with Mrs. Burton swearing her in, and she brought her lovely family with her.
My parents.
All righty. I, Madeline Acosta,
I, Madeline Acosta,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of member of the Board of Education
of member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
So this was a treat because my parents don't usually come out here. This is probably the first time they've been or witnessed the Board of Education meeting. So I appreciate them coming out. I know they had other things to do and they came. And Coach Nico had a football meeting that he left to come here and be here today, so that was really important. I just want to thank the voters for believing in me again for another term, and thank my family for always supporting me in everything that I do, because this does require a lot of hours. We want to be committed to our community and show up for events, so making this a priority. So thank you to the community for entrusting us.
All right. Okay, thank you. Moving on, now we're going to move on to item 3C. This is our annual election of officers that is done every year, and we are going to be electing a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer. So we'll have a board member will nominate somebody for that position. I'll ask if there's any more nominations from the floor. If there's not, then we will go ahead and we will close the nominations, and then we will take a vote to vote us into our positions. So the first office, I guess we will go with, let me get my paperwork here. The election of president. Is there anybody that would like to make a nomination for the election of president?
President Bradford?
Mrs. Burton.
I would like to nominate you as president of the school board for the next coming school year. Our board elects officers for single years, but it's been our past practice for the last many years, really, to have that person serve for usually a couple of years. And you've done a lovely job in this role. It takes several months really to get into the rhythm of the whole thing once you go through the cycle of everything. So really, the first year is a lot of learning. You've done it in a beautiful manner. And really, a president really, I think, hits their stride serving in that second year. So I'd be happy to have you continue to serve in that role.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. We have Karen Bradford for president. Are there any further nominations for president? Seeing none, I'm going to close the nomination, the motion, and we're going to go ahead and Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll?
President Burton.
Yes.
Sorry. Mrs. Burton.
Sorry. I've been president before.
Yeah, it does.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. McFarland.
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford.
Yes, and that motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. I really have enjoyed being the president this past year, and I have gained a lot of experience for sure. There's a lot of duties as to being the president, and I do enjoy it, and I'm grateful for the leadership of Mark and Colleen, who have served in this role before, and I'm thankful that you guys have been able to help me learn the role, and I'll continue in it as best I can. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, moving on to item B, the election of vice president. Do we have anybody who would like to make a nomination for vice president?
President Bradford.
Mr. Vice President Johnson.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to nominate Crystal Frank as vice president. We are so thankful that you were reelected. You bring a real perspective to the board, and I think you do well serving as the vice president.
Thank you. Crystal Frank for vice president. Are there any further nominations for vice president? Seeing none, we will go ahead with the vote. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the vote, please?
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mr. McFarland,
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Congratulations, Crystal.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Vice President Johnson and Colleen, who have done this job faithfully and who have served our district so well in the leadership position. So I'm looking forward to learning lots from both of you, as you will help me as I transition into this role. So thanks so much.
All right, moving on to the next item, the election of secretary. Is there anybody that would like to make a nomination for secretary? Mrs. Frank.
I would like to nominate Mrs. Acosta. She has done it last year with grace and diligence, and I think that she would do a great job this year, having won re-election as well. That I think she would continue to do a great job in that role.
Madeline Acosta for secretary. Are there any further nominations for secretary? Seeing none, Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. McFarland,
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. The last appointment is the appointment of treasurer. Is there anyone who would move to make the motion for our treasurer for this year? Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. Move that Allison Smith be appointed treasurer of the Livonia Public Schools School District for 2025 until the next annual election of officers.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Burton, to move that Allison Smith should be appointed treasurer of the Livonia Public Schools School District for the 2025 year, or until the next annual election of officers. Mrs. Smith, would you like to, should we take the roll first?
She should accept the
Oh,
nomination.
I guess I better make sure that you agree to accept that. Mrs. Smith?
I would love to accept, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, with that, we can go ahead and take the roll.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mr. McFarland,
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Congratulations, Mrs. Smith. Just for reference, Mrs. Smith is usually appointed our treasurer of the board, and she apprises us of all the updates and everything that's going on financially in the district. We have a committee that works, and she's our Chief Financial Officer. So she's able to serve in that role through our MASB rules. She's able to serve as our treasurer, and we are very grateful for that. She attends a lot of our meetings. She's also able to update us on current financial information that is pertinent for us. So we're really pleased that you're able to stay in that position. So thank you. All right. And with that, interestingly, now we have to move our seats around. But the only person that has to move their seat is, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, and Mrs. Frank. I get to sit next to Mrs. Frank. I don't think this has ever happened. And I'm going to have to probably see if that's going to be okay with my superintendent.
This could be a problem.
Yeah, during our break.
Oh, okay, we'll do that oh, good, I'll be able to sit next to Mark for a few more minutes. I love sitting next to Mark, don't get me wrong. But I'm excited for Mrs. Frank to be next to me. All right. I hope it's not gonna be too much trouble. Okay. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. All right, moving on to item 3D. School Board Recognition Month, and I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Jenkins again. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bradford, and congratulations to the newly appointed officers.
Thank you.
I probably say this on this item every year, but this is truly one of my favorite recognitions of every school year. So it's an honor and a privilege to acknowledge our Board of Education during this month of January, designated as School Board Recognition Month. Each January, Livonia Public Schools joins over 500 school districts across the state of Michigan in expressing our heartfelt appreciation to the 7 members of the LPS Board of Education. School Board Recognition Month was established by the Michigan Association of School Boards to honor and thank the more than 4,000 dedicated elected community leaders across the state who serve on local school boards. Here in Livonia, we are proud to say that we have the best school board in the state of Michigan. Each of you represents our community with professionalism, thoughtfulness, and genuine care. Whether you are advancing your professional growth through the MASB courses or attending school and district events, you exemplify the dedication and effectiveness of a high-functioning board, and for that we are deeply grateful. You approach your roles with a remarkable sense of purpose, passion, and pride, those 3 familiar words. You clearly understand the board's responsibilities and work in close collaboration with the district's administration. The focus of all of your efforts remains clear: what is best for our students. Our district continues to make significant progress in areas such as fiscal management, facilities improvements, and a steadfast commitment to advancing learning and achievement for our 13,000+ students. You strongly support our district's 4 key priorities: student achievement, increasing employee capacity, financial stewardship, and fostering a supportive climate and culture within our schools. You are truly champions of LPS, serving as positive role models for all that we strive to accomplish here for our students, families, and our staff. We often talk about the points of pride in Livonia Public Schools, and you are undoubtedly one of those points of pride. Your consistent recognition as an honor board over the years shows your unwavering commitment to learning and growing, both collectively as a team and individually, by completing the MASB coursework. As of now, the following awards have been issued to members of the board following those courses offered through the Michigan Association of School Boards. At current standing, we have Crystal Frank has achieved the Award of Merit. Madeline Acosta and Liz Jarvis have achieved the Master Board Member Award. And Karen Bradford, Colleen Burton, and Mark Johnson have all achieved the Master Diamond Board Member Award. Since this is Dave McFarland's very first regular school board meeting, we will allow him a bit of time to delve into this MASB coursework. But I know Dave is a competitive guy, and he's going to catch himself right up, I bet. We all know the tremendous amount of time and effort you dedicate to thoroughly understanding the issues before you, engaging in respectful discussions, and working together to find the best solutions for our district. We are fortunate to have you as trusted partners and advocates for our students, families, and staff. At this time, I would like to present each of you with a special certificate of recognition from the Michigan Association of School Boards, and that certificate reads, Certificate of Appreciation for your dedication to our children and public education in Michigan. And then it has your name and the superintendent's name and the school district name, obviously, and it's signed by the MASB President James Johnson and Executive Director Don Wotroba. Okay, so if I may present those to the board at this time?
Yes, please.
Okay. I reshuffled these 3 times thinking, are they going to change these or are they not going to change these? So.
Thank you, Stacy.
You're welcome. All right, and if you'll bear with me, I always like to read the local resolution that was adopted earlier this month by the Wayne County Regional Educational Service Agency, or Wayne RESA, their Board of Education, if I may. Whereas education is essential to the future of the 43 communities across Wayne County, as well as to the prosperity of our state and our nation, and the boards of education that represent the more than 260,000 students across Wayne County play a vital role in providing high-quality education for each student attending their schools. And whereas these dedicated public servants demonstrate an unwavering commitment to their responsibilities, voluntarily contributing countless hours of service on behalf of the students, parents, educators, and community members of Wayne County, making thoughtful and informed decisions on policies, programs, and resources that affect the quality of education. And whereas Wayne County School Board members, as local citizens, exhibit exceptional leadership and vision, advocating for the needs of students in their communities and engaging with policymakers in Lansing and Washington, D.C. And whereas Wayne County School Boards understand the importance of ensuring access, opportunity, equity, and excellence in education, and they are dedicated to advancing student achievement and well-being while ensuring schools remain safe, supportive, and inclusive. And whereas the mission of public schools is to meet the diverse educational needs of all students and empower them to become informed and productive contributors to society and an ever-changing world. And whereas the state of Michigan and the State Board of Education have declared January 2025 as School Board Recognition Month, providing an opportunity to celebrate the commitment, passion, and resilience of school board members. And whereas School Board Recognition Month highlights the champions serving on Wayne County Boards of Education who oversee pre-kindergarten through 12th grade and beyond, preparing students for success in a globally competitive society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Wayne County Regional Educational Service Agency Board of Education, in honor of School Board Recognition Month, recognizes and celebrates the valuable contributions and exemplary leadership of the Wayne County School Boards of Education. Presented and adopted on December 18th, 2024 was their last voting meeting, I believe, by the Wayne RESA Board of Education, signed by Wayne RESA Board of Education President James Petrie, Vice President Mary Blackman, Treasurer James Berry, Secretary Danielle Funderburg, and Trustee Linda Jackson. So we've included a copy of this resolution in your board packet, as well as a proclamation from the state of Michigan, signed by Governor Wimmer.
Thank
So,
you.
with all of that, I'd like to now turn it over to Superintendent Oakwitz, who I'm sure has a few words.
Thank you. I will actually make them relatively brief, only because, Mrs. Jenkins, you did an absolutely
Yes.
beautiful job in your opening.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for putting that together.
Yeah.
While the resolution is wonderful, what you shared about our board captured so much of what we would want to say about each and every one of you. So thank you for what you put together. That was a beautiful tribute to them. The one thing I would have to say about our board is that you are all in. You are all in everything that you do. You are all in for our kids, you are all in for our staff, and you are all in for this community. And the fact that that 3 of you came forward and said, I'm willing to do this again. I'm willing to give 4 more years of my life. The fact that we had someone new come forward who has a very busy life on his own to say, this is how I want to contribute my time. Most people, I think, don't often realize that this is a volunteer position. So I know sometimes they believe that that maybe your employees or in some other way work for the district. And you do this because of your dedication to service, and you could serve in a lot of different ways, and many of you do in addition to this. But first and foremost, you have our children that are entrusted to us in your hearts. And that shows in little and big ways each and every day. So we know how lucky we are in Livonia Public Schools. When we don't say that lightly when we say you are an exemplar board and truly are a shining light in this state. I know I see that and hear that when I am at superintendent conferences. I know you see and hear that when you're involved with the Michigan Association of School Boards. And that really shows by not only the dedication you've given to your professional development, which you've noted through the honors that they've been awarded, by the number of classes you've taken in your own time, but also just on the day-to-day, the way that you care about our kids, our schools in this district. So we are grateful for each and every one of you. This is just one time of the year when we get to put the spotlight on you, because most of the time you're putting the spotlight on others. So thank you for serving. Thank you for being a guiding light for me and for our entire district.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Superintendent Oquist. It is a labor of love, and I know everybody sitting at this table dedicates their time because they love what they do, and they love kids. They love the work that they do. And when you work with a good group of people and you all are trying to make the ship go forward the best we can every day, it's really important. And it makes a difference to be able to work with just great people every Monday night, you know, and Wednesday at noon, and every other time we come to the district events, which are quite a bit. So on behalf of all of us, we thank you for the love you just shared with us, and we always will do the work to the best of our ability. So thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, and with that, we're going to take just a short break, just to, I guess, chat with our guests, and also move around a bit, shift our positions a bit, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you. Good evening, and we're back again for the regular board meeting of January 27th, 2025. We are going to go ahead and start at item 3E, the district update from the superintendent. Mrs. Oquist.
Thanks so much, President Bradford. We have a great update for you this evening. We'll throw that up on the screen. And here we go. We love always starting with just some great pictures of learning and growing across the district. So this is at Kennedy Elementary. We have Mrs. Gostomski here and Ms. Targos, two of our second grade classes at Kennedy. They had a blast with their book tasting event. They were preparing for their upcoming author study. It's awesome to see our teachers get into the theme. And if you've not heard of a book tasting event, it's a great way to introduce students to many different titles and many different options. They get a little taste of each and then can choose those they'd like to read in the future. And here we have our Cooper Upper Elementary students really digging into the subject of science, doing some hands-on work and experiments, making some hypotheses, and then checking to see if those hold true. And this time of year, one of the most fun things to do, adults may not like it out there, but our kindergartners sure love the snow. So you know, when we're able to get out there, when we have temps over 15 degrees, our kiddos bundle up and they love to spend some time outside, and we know it's good for them as well. Here we have some of our Livonia Career Technical Center engineering students. They have been hard at work on their projects and showing their progress on a scale house elevation, as well as a two-sided coin project. Lots of great things always happening at the Career Center. Recently, we had an opportunity to have many of our English language learner families visit one of our Stevenson hockey games. So this was coordinated by one of our EL teachers, Mr. DiMaggio, along with Arnie Muscat, our athletic director at Stevenson. They invited many of our EL families who were in attendance for a great win. I believe it was a 9-4 win that night. And it was the first hockey game for many of these folks as they are new to our country. So great opportunity to do that. Love to see what our EL teachers do to help introduce lots of different aspects of our culture to our families. And here we have the new Falcon mask, the new Frost Falcon mascot called Frankie the Falcon. So here we have one of our teachers and our assistant principal, Mr. Jensen, ready to help pump up the crowd with the Frankie the Falcon. And I know a number of you were able to stop by, a number of our cabinet team were as well. Mochi Suki at Niji Iro, so this is the annual event where we do the rice pounding. And then many of the parent volunteers, for a relatively small school, they had over 65 parent volunteers there, helping to make the different mochi. And the students had an opportunity, every student got to pound the rice. And then the parents were in two different classrooms helping to make the mochi and organize the day for the students. They were so excited about that, and I had a couple of great helpers when I was pounding the rice and truly enjoyed spending time over there and thanking the many volunteers. We had a couple of days where our students were away during the cold days, but we actually had our administrators in. So we know that learning never stops, and honestly, on a day when we don't have students in session, it was actually a great day to bring all of our administrators together. We brought in Dr. Sean Bishop from the Michigan Association of School Administrators. He did an amazing workshop for us on AI and the way that it can help us be more efficient in our work, as well as the way it can benefit our learners in the classroom. So we were able to learn with him for about 3.5 hours and really dig in. And he was very engaging. Both Mr. Francis and I have had an opportunity to see him present, and we were thrilled to have him in our district. He is very in demand across the state, and so it was a great learning opportunity. I've heard from a number of our administrators ideas already that they've been able to put into play. We are actually going to be starting an AI task force in the district to really explore not only the avenue of workforce and workplace efficiency, but also for student learning. We had our students, Churchill Unified students, have a parade at school. They got to celebrate the Unified basketball team with a parade before their first home game, and I love how our school communities come together to support our students. A number of us were able to be at the Churchill Franklin Unified game. Was that last week, Mrs. O'Connor? 2 weeks ago? Last week? Golly. Recently. Recently. And what a great turnout in the crowd, as well as all of the staff who volunteer to work with our teams, our peer partners. It was just really an amazing program that has grown quite a bit in our district. And so speaking of that, I've now jumped through, but we have, this was the game we were talking about. This is the Franklin and Churchill Unified teams, which there was a triple header, the Unified basketball, girls, and then boys varsity. So it was a wonderful event that evening, and I believe tomorrow night, Churchill Unified basketball is playing at 4 o'clock at Churchill for folks who are interested. You may remember us talking about this last year, but this is absolutely adorable. Our Career Center Advanced Med students hosted their annual Stuffy Wellness Clinic for first graders at Buchanan. So students brought in their favorite stuffed animal friends to get a checkup. So they were able to learn from the Advanced Med students. They talked about how to stay healthy, especially during this winter season. It was absolutely adorable. So we love the partnership our students, our high school students have with our elementary kiddos. The Frosty, it was a student activity and kind of a bit of a dress-up, I believe. Is that true, Mr. E2? A bit of a dress-up event held at Frost. It was the first formalish event that was organized by their student activities director, parents, secretaries, and the student council. Pretty cool snow globe there as a photo backdrop. Mm-hmm. And we had, oh goodness, this is hard to see and hard to talk about, but I will do my best. We had lots of Lions Pride throughout this season, and a couple Fridays ago, we had kiddos dressing up and staff dressing up across the district. And you may have seen Mrs. Flack's second grade class from Hoover was featured on Channel 4. They did the ABCs of rooting on your team and the way to show school spirit. It was absolutely adorable. If you look it up online, you'll see it. But they were able to wish good luck to the Lions, and we wish that we wish that would have made the impact we were hoping for. Not much to say besides that. So the LCTC has been taking some time to feature quite a variety of guest speakers to really showcase some students to have diverse backgrounds in their career fields. So they had visits from the senior reliability engineer for Google, a member of the Student Schoolcraft's admissions department, and the United States Air Force. So it's always really important that our students have an opportunity to learn about their career pathway or the educational pathway that they may take toward that career, to hear from folks in the field. And so we want to give some kudos to some people in our district. We had many LPS music teachers who were presenters at the Michigan Music Conference. So this was the state music conference. We had 5 of our music teachers there as presenters, sharing their expertise in performance, social emotional integration, social networking, and positive classroom culture. So we want to thank them for their work and the difference that they made, not only with their peers, but across the state. And we have our DECA students there. Isn't it great? I love when our high schoolers are all dressed up and ready to go. We know DECA takes a lot of time and dedication, but here are some Churchill and Stevenson DECA students. Stevenson had 57 students compete at the district conference, and 41 of those made it to states. Churchill had 29 competitors, and 21 are headed to states. So we are going to have quite the representation at states this year, and we are hoping that many of them will go on to national competition. We had the Stevenson Senate Showcase. So they were voted into the top 3 presentations at the recent MASC competition. So that's really the state organization for school senates and school congress and so on. And so they are also advancing to states. So their presentation about the 25 days of giving highlighted the work that they did to support Forgotten Harvest during Charity Month. So really, we are so proud of our students that participate in Senate and Congress and leadership throughout our high schools and middle schools, and we wish them much luck at states. Our Franklin Bowlers, can you believe we are well into bowling, wrestling, all the winter sports, hockey, basketball, everything. It's amazing that we're already mid-season. But our Franklin High School bowling teams brought home 2 trophies from the Tri-County Invitational. The girls bowling finished 4th out of 22 teams, and the boys finished 3rd out of 30. So as you know, they are normally formidable competitors during bowling season, and we're excited to see where they go. Our Franklin boys basketball team had the opportunity to play down at LCA. Isn't that cool? So Mr. Mazzella and Mr. Kozler worked the clock and announced the game, which was pretty neat. And our students got to play in the actual arena, and their families and friends were able to go down and watch that game. So always a really cool opportunity when our students have the opportunity to play on the big stage that way. The Observerland Wrestling Invite was hosted at Churchill High School. And so great job to the team there for hosting this. We have students from 25 different teams, so tons of staff, volunteers, and students who helped host this great event. Do we see a familiar face there in the middle? Is that Addie?
That is.
I think we see Addie Frank running things there, taking stats, and no doubt doing all the important work. So you want to talk about our dedicated board. It's not just our board, it's their family. Here we go. At POM Regionals, so Regionals comes before states, so that always takes place in January. And we are excited that Franklin JV and varsity, Stevenson varsity, and Churchill all qualified for states. Franklin and Stevenson will be in D1, Churchill in D2, and we can't wait to see their routines at states. We know how much hard work they put into this, and they have been very successful in recent years, so we are going to be cheering them on. Just last few notes to mark your calendars. This is a big week for our high schools. So it's a 9th grade preview night. So tomorrow night, Franklin, Wednesday night, Stevenson, Thursday night, Churchill. So this is for 8th grade students as well as students from private or parochial schools who are interested in learning more about our high schools. This is a flyer that went out, and on that QR code, parents can also schedule a tour of the school in addition to the preview nights. So this is out there, and we are really excited to welcome our incoming 9th grade kiddos. And then the LCTC always holds their preview night on a different evening, so they will be February 5th. And there will be a schedule of events, and Mrs. Gray and her team are ready to welcome students to attend different sessions to learn about all of the program offerings. Mr. Itu, targeted toward grades
Middle school?
8,
Yep.
9, and 10, or no? Just 8?
9 and 10 can visit, but it's more geared towards the middle school 8th grade year.
Okay, so primarily targeting 8th grade, but 9th and 10th grade, because you know you can't go there until 11th, so if they would like to, they may attend as well. Did you know Phantom of the Opera is coming? Here it comes. Yes, of course, it's Kappa taking on the big one. Phantom of the Opera, February 28th, March 1st, and 2nd. QR code to purchase your tickets. Be sure to attend. That's a not miss event. And then finally, kindergarten parents, don't forget, February 1st is the deadline to sign up for Competitive Edge. So as you know, the foundation proudly gives a scholarship to each of the graduating seniors who signed up for the Competitive Edge when their children were in kindergarten. So this wonderful program continues, so be sure to have your kindergartners signed up by February 1st. So thank you, President Bradford, for allowing me to share some highlights from across the district.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Oquist. There's so much going on, so many great things happening. I always look forward to that update from you, so that's wonderful. All right, we're going to move on to item 3F, F, written communications. I don't have any written communications, so we will go ahead and move on. To item 3G, response to prior audience communications. I don't believe we have any this evening. So we will move on to item 3H, audience communications. Audience communications is a time for the board to hear audience's feedback and concerns or recommendations on school district matters. It's not a debate or a dialogue or a question and answer period. Rather, we will like to listen to your concerns, and your input is appreciated. You will have 3 minutes. If I have a couple slips here, you can have up to 3 minutes to speak. We do have a new timer, but we'll use it at the next time. We're still learning how to use it. So Mrs. Frank will be our timer tonight. It's 3 minutes, and we're going to go ahead and begin with that. So I'd like to call up Karen Smith, please. Come on up. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
I am Karen Smith. I am the head of Children's and Teen Services across the street at the library, and I just wanted to introduce myself to everybody and let you know about a very cool contest that we have coming up at the library. It is a library card design contest. So, calling all artists and creative minds, the Livonia Public Library is excited to announce our library card design contest. This year is extra special as we celebrate Livonia's 75th anniversary, and we're inviting you to help us commemorate this milestone. Here's your chance to leave your mark on the community by designing our next library card, which will be used by thousands of patrons. Whether you're a seasoned designer or just love to create, we invite you to showcase your talent. So this contest is open to all ages, so we want all of the students to get involved. I know just from the kids who come in the library how creative the students are in this community. So there'll be 3 different levels, kids, teens, and adults. So if anybody here is creative, I have the application right here if you want to enter. Judging criteria will be creativity and originality, relevance to the theme, visual appeal, adherence to submission guidelines, and community voting. And the theme is celebrating 75 years of Livonia, highlight the city's history, community, spirit, and vision for the future. So this is just one of the ways that we want to help the community, get the community involved in things, and just one of the ways that we want to partner with the schools. So, thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight and letting us hear about that. That's wonderful.
Sure. And I'll stick around after the meeting if anyone has any questions or anything.
Where can people find information?
At the library website, livoniapubliclibrary.org. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Happy to share that.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Yes, Mrs. Jenkins did share it with some of her art teachers, and I believe they did a post for it as well.
Okay,
so, as
great.
did Livonia Community. So we're hoping to get lots of good submissions.
Great.
So, great.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Karen. All right. Our next speaker this evening is John Stewart. Welcome.
Before I start, I dictated my comments last Wednesday as a lawyer of 45 years, and Martha Trafford edited and proofread all of them. So I'm going to read right straight through them.
Okay.
My name is John Stewart, former state rep of 6 years, having represented Livonia. I was chair of higher education appropriations. Currently, I'm an elected trustee in Plymouth Township for the next 4 years. My mother was the youngest of 12 Vandervins from Holland, Michigan. 7 taught public school for 40 years each in Michigan, and my favorite uncle, James, was superintendent in Mason for 21 years.
Wow.
All across Michigan, I am proud to talk about the Livonia Public Schools. In many aspects, you have provided a model of excellence for other public school districts. My son-in-law is the athletic director over in Granville, and I've become acquainted with Rockford, Granville, and Hudsonville, and they're excellent districts, and large, much to my surprise. In my law office of 40 years, it seems someone comes into my office once a week and says, I went through the Livonia Public Schools. I'm fortunate to tell you that Karen Danke, instrumental music teacher, and John Wenstrom, upper elementary principal, are personal friends of mine. I commend them for decades of service educating Michigan's children. I applaud you for supporting band, orchestra, and choir in the curriculum of the Livonia Public Schools. Our culture is music. Livonia Public Schools has a book about the history of the Livonia Public Schools. I walked in here and Stacy Jenkins said to me, "Is Martha Trafford still running your law office?" And I said, "Yes, 9 to 1 every day." She wrote this book, and there is a picture in here on page 369 of elementary school principal Andrea O'Quist. This book was 1830 to 2002.
Closer to 2002 than 1830. I just like to just note that.
Don't take my time, okay. It is Martha's fondest wish that an update be written. The benefits of this book, documenting and memorializing the excellence in our public education, which is the foundation, not just the cornerstone, it's the foundation of our democracy. She continues to come into my office every day and write articles and edit them. The purpose of my message is to ask for a stipend for a current or retired teacher. Very difficult, but HR should try and find another Martha Trafford. You can update with someone like Stacy Mason, bachelor's and MBA from the University of Michigan, currently director of cultural activities at the Sanctuary of St. John's in Plymouth Township. She fondly remembers playing the violin in her excellent academic education at Stevenson High School. That name was Stacy Mason. Class lady, highly intelligent. I want to thank you as professionals for listening. I wish you and the Livonia Public Schools and all the best as we set our goals for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John.
Wonderful.
I will carry your love and wishes back to Martha.
Please.
Very, if I may, we're all always on record, clear-minded as ever. Challenging me every day. It must be grammatically correct. Her knees are shot. She stood the whole time she taught 31 years. So it's kind of a, both my sisters are retired public high school teachers, and my niece is Linda Kell, the deputy superintendent over at Wayne Risa. So thank you again, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, and that concludes audience communications. We're going to go on to item 4, our consent agenda, and may I have a motion, please? Sorry, I've got to get there.
President Bradford.
Mrs. Frank.
But I gotta get there. Thank you. And I gotta make it bigger.
Okay.
Move that the Board of Education of Livonia Public Schools School District approve the following consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent. 5A, minutes of the regular meeting of December 16th, 2024.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Jarvis for the consent agenda. Is there anybody, member of the board, who would like to remove this item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, we will go ahead, and we have a motion again by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Jarvis for the consent agenda. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. We're going to go ahead and move down to item 6, business matters. 6A, the approval of the sale of bonds. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mr. Johnson.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the attached resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds, delegation of the sale of bonds and/or refunding bonds, and other matters relating thereto, including the authorization of the superintendent or her designee to execute necessary documents and agreements.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Burton, for the approval of the sale of bonds. And this evening, we're going to hear from Mrs. Allison Smith.
Thank you, President Bradford, and thank you to the board for the time allotted to cover this topic at both our study session and the Committee of the Whole meeting. To summarize, approval of this resolution will authorize the sale of the third series of the 2021 voter-approved bonds for an amount not to exceed $38 million. And will also authorize the district to offer to buy back or tender outstanding bonds from investors at a premium to market value funded with refunding bonds with the purpose of achieving overall savings for taxpayers. So again, we had the opportunity to discuss this in detail, but that's a summary of what this resolution will provide.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Are there any questions and comments? Mrs. Burton.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, can you just go into a little bit more detail about the savings to the taxpayers on this? Because we had some discussion at the Committee of the Whole about that.
Absolutely. So with the tendering, we are looking to buy back bonds, and that would be at a premium to the market value. But the purpose of it is to save our taxpayers in interest costs. So if we're paying 5% now, the idea that we could achieve a 4% bond, that's money that goes directly back, or I should say, is not money that gets added into our construction funds, but it would be a reduction directly for our taxpayers. So that would be less that we have to collect from taxpayers to pay the outstanding bonds back. So that's we're always keeping an eye out for opportunities to save the community dollars. So we work very closely with PFM, our financial advisors, and Troon, our attorney for these bond sales, to look at what opportunities are out there for school districts and keep our eyes open for ways that we can save money.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Any other questions or comments? I do want to say, we do go through, this is our regular meeting. I guess I didn't say that at the beginning. Many of these items we have discussed at last Monday at our Committee of the Whole meeting. So if you are interested in hearing a more richer discussion, you're welcome to go back and take a look at our Committee of the Whole meeting. So you don't think we're rushing through with these. We have discussed them at length over 2 times at least, if not more. So just to let you know that. We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Burton, for the approval of the sale of bonds. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. We're going to move on to item 6B, the approval of AC installation at auto and wood shops. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford.
Mrs. Burton.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve funding for the purchase and installation of HVAC units for the auto and wood shops at Churchill High School, Franklin High School, Stevenson High School, and the Livonia Career Technical Center from Quality Air Systems located in Whitmore, Michigan, for a total cost of $1,326,080, which includes contingency.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Frank, for the approval of AC installation at auto and wood shops. And this evening, we're going to hear from Mr. Francis.
Good evening, everybody. This, as we discussed at the Committee of the Whole last week, is a replacement of the original HVAC system in these areas and in these spaces at the schools that are mentioned. It's a heat-only unit currently, and again, it's original equipment, so it is time to make that replacement after many decades, and we will be adding air conditioning to that HVAC system in these locations. Quality Air Systems was the low responsible bidder. We've worked with that company in the district. We're very comfortable with our working relationship with them. And yes, we put in a little bit of a contingency because you never know what's going to happen when we start working. This is a sinking fund project, and just to clarify for anybody who didn't catch the Committee of the Whole or wants to go back to it, specifically LCTC, the 2 rooms at LCTC will be the auto shop, and what they have as a construction trades is the class. They call that the construction trades room. Stevenson is the other school that has an auto shop still, so we have that area along with their wood shop. Franklin and Churchill haven't had a auto shop in many years. They both have wood shops, so we'll be doing the HVAC replacement in those spaces. So just to specify the locations.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments? Mrs. Frank?
Just confirming, just because as we talked about the wood shops or the auto shops, we do have auto at the Livonia Career Technical Center. So if someone is at Franklin or at Churchill that wants to take an auto shop, they can take it at the Livonia Career Technical Center. So we do offer it at those schools, even though it's not housed at their building.
Correct. That would be one of the junior, senior courses. We have an Auto 1 and an Auto 2 programmatically at the Career Technical Center. You're welcome.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Frank, for the approval of AC installation at auto and wood shops. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Moving on to item 6C, the approval of high school stadium lighting replacement materials. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation to replace the lighting for our Churchill, Franklin, and Stevenson High School Stadium project from Musco Sports Lighting, LLC, located in Oskaloosa, Iowa, for a total cost of $672,479.
Support.
Oh, stereo. We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mr. Johnson.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Oh, Mrs. Jarvis, sorry about that. A motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by, who supported? Mrs. Acosta, we'll go with Mrs. Acosta. Oh, I've gotten all thrown off here. For the approval of high school stadium lighting replacement materials, and we're going to hear from Mr. Francis.
Thank you again. First, just big props to hitting Oskaloosa on the first swing at it. I took me several, so good for you. So we talked about this quite a bit. We had even a picture and a brief video, et cetera, trying to lay out what this is. I have stated this as an update and an upgrade. We're going to be replacing the lighting at all three high school stadiums, updating it with LEDs, and there's different upgrades that were discussed at the committee of the whole. We have some excited athletic directors, we have some excited principals, we have some excited board members, and it's going to be a great project. So right now we've got this capital project fund, as the board has been supportive of updating our athletic programs. That includes both athletics with regard to after school and those type of extracurricular, but also just the PE programs, et cetera, throughout our high school. So we really want to thank the board for their support. This is going to be something that we're going to bring the materials into the warehouse and hold, and I'll be bringing next month more information about the remainder of this project.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments? Yeah, this is going to be pretty exciting, the lighting. They're switching over to LED in the stadium, so it's really going to look great out there at our field. So it's going to be a great project. Any other comments? Mrs. Burton.
Mr. Francis, at the committee of the whole meeting, a question was asked about whether or not this is going to provide sufficient lighting for the auxiliary areas, the concession stand and ticket area and so forth. Did you have an opportunity to check on that, or?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, I actually sent an email out with information, et cetera, to the three high school athletic administrators and the high school principals, along with our supervisor of maintenance and our administrator of facilities and operations. And first of all, they're, again, very thankful to the board and to everybody who's been supporting this work. With regard to that specific question, we're going to do some investigations, some specific investigations. I talked to at least one athletic director who said, I can point right now to the places that aren't hitting enough light. So we'll take a look at those with a little bit closer eye and then work on it.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
because I know, speaking for myself, if we're gonna do it, I'd like to make sure that we've gotten all the little corners that need to be lit, properly lit.
Support.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Burton. All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Acosta, for the approval of high school stadium lighting replacement materials. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Moving on to item 6D, the approval of change order for high school field houses. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mr. McFarland.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public School District approve the change orders for Churchill High School, Franklin High School, and Stevenson High School batting cages in the amount of $28,725, which will bring the total approved amount for this high school field house equipment project to $362,025.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. McFarland, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, for the approval of change order for high school field houses. And again, we'll hear from Mr. Francis.
Thank you again. This harkens back to a November item when we brought the information to the board, and the board approved a dollar amount to be able to replace the portable hoops and removal of one volleyball setup that is comes down from the ceiling, replacing it with batting cage. We had conversations at the study session as well as the committee of the whole. This was just a miscommunication between three parties kind of working together, but having a little bit of a miss. We originally wanted, the athletic directors originally wanted to match what they have with regard to the batting cage, which is one net that comes down, but it has a break in the middle or a divider in the middle, so you can have two players in there. What was originally in the quote was for a single player to only be able to occupy and use. So we want to match that up. You could have four in the batting cage at any time if you have it doubled like that. So we had to reach back out and ask for an updated quote, and this amount of $28,725 covers all three high schools to have that put in as the spec that we originally did want. So I apologize for the confusion in that.
Okay, no problem. Anybody have any questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. McFarland, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, for the approval of change order for high school field houses. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Moving on to item 7, instruction matters. Item A, the expulsion of one secondary student. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford,
Mrs. Burton.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District expel one secondary student for violations of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education policies.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mr. Johnson, for the expulsion of one secondary student. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Moving on to item 8, personnel matters, and item 8A, teachers for approval. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford?
Mrs. Acosta.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and offer employment for the 2024-25 school year to the teachers listed on the attached document.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Acosta, supported by Mrs. Frank, for teachers for approval. And this evening, we're going to hear from Mr. Abate.
Hello, thank you, everyone. Tonight, the staff members we're presenting to the board are filling needs in elementary education and student services roles. They're very well qualified to fill their respective positions, and we are confident they will perform at a high level. And
and represent LPS in a manner that is consistent with our shared vision and collective commitments. These positions have also been included in the 2024-2025 budget. We are pleased to be recommending these talented professionals to join our LPS family, and with your approval, we are excited to have them working with our students.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Congratulations. Welcome to LPS. And at this time, we have a motion by Mrs. Acosta, supported by Mrs. Frank, for teachers for approval. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Acosta says yes. Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Moving on to item 8B, teachers for tenure. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford.
Mrs. Frank.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and acknowledge the tenure status has been granted to the following teachers, effective on the respective dates. Megan Harris, January 6, 2025. Thomas Hurley, January 26, 2025. Heather Pittman, January 28, 2025. John McDaniel, January 30th, 2025.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Acosta, for teachers for tenure, and this evening we're going to hear from Mrs. Keats.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Our teachers for tenure on this agenda have successfully completed the district's requirements for probationary teachers, including years of service, evaluations of overall performance, and documentation of student growth. We have carefully reviewed all supporting materials along with the recommendations of our school administration and have verified they should be granted tenure status with Livonia Public Schools. We wish to offer our congratulations for reaching this milestone and look forward to continued success in LPS.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Congratulations. Congratulations are in order. Yes, thank you for our teachers and their longevity to the job. Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Acosta, for teachers for tenure. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. Moving on to item 8C, resignations. That is for board information only. So we will move on to item 8D, retirements. May I have a motion, please?
President Bradford.
Mr. Johnson.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolution of appreciation for services rendered by Tamara Blau.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Frank, for retirements. And this evening, we're going to hear from Mrs. Keats.
Tonight we honor and congratulate one member of our LPS family, Tamara Blau, who is retiring from her position with Livonia Public Schools. She leaves the district after giving 27.5 successful years of art instruction to LPS students. On behalf of the administration, I would like to thank our retiree for the dedicated years of service she provided our students, and we ask the board to please adopt the attached resolution of appreciation.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Enjoy your retirement. Yes. We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Frank, for retirements. Mrs. Acosta, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland?
Yes.
Mrs. Acosta says yes. President Bradford?
Yes, and that motion carries. All right, moving on to item 9, hearing from board members. We are going to do 9A, the first reading of Board Policy IB, Goals and Objectives. And since this is a first reading, it doesn't come for a vote yet. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you, President Bradford. This board policy, instructional program goals and objectives, has not been looked at for 10 years. So we spent some time at the last 2 meetings, study session and committee of the whole, and we rewrote this policy. So I would like to read it.
Yes, please read it into the record, if you would.
And then in a month when we voted in, we'll be ready to go.
Yes.
So it reads, Our instructional programming is rooted in providing students with the skills, characteristics, and qualities to be successful in the world beyond our doors. Beginning with preschool through post-secondary, our students will be provided with the educational experiences to meet or exceed the state standards for each grade and content area to pursue their educational or career pathway, understand the timeless values and universal principles of our community with character so that they develop the life skills and habits of mind that they need to thrive academically, socially, and personally now and in the future. Read, write, and think at high levels, feel confident working with others, and have a sense of purpose in themselves. Have access to learning that is engaging, flexible, thoughtful, critical, and collaborative, and supports their individualized learning needs. Be empowered to utilize a variety of tools to build their understanding and demonstrate their achievement, and then contribute to their communities through active citizenship.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any comments? Yeah, I just have one. When you read you said individual learning needs, is that going to be changed, or we don't have?
Individualized learning needs, so I read that wrong.
Okay.
Is that what you mean, the second?
Yeah, it's the. No, it doesn't, yeah, it won't, yeah, it's not a motion, but it says, you said have access to learning that is engaging, flexible, thoughtful, critical, and collaborative, and supports their individualized needs. Or is it supposed to say learning needs?
Well, because it's all about their instructional experience within our schools, we just talked about, I believe we didn't change that and add learning. So so having access to learning that's engaging, flexible, thoughtful, critical, and collaborative, and supports their individualized needs.
Perfect.
Since we're already talking about learning.
Okay, that's fine. That
Okay.
sounds good. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, that looks good. Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. All right, we're going to go on to item, that's going to be put on for the next regular meeting for a second reading. Since we've completed the reading now, we'll just be able to take the vote on that. Item 9B, first reading of Board Policy IC Curriculum Development. And again, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board Policy IC is Instructional Program Curriculum Development. This policy is from 1988. It was reviewed 10 years ago in 2014. So we took some time and we rewrote it for today. And so it reads, the district curriculum is a carefully planned sequence of instruction designed to achieve specific learning goals based on State of Michigan standards. It outlines the subjects, skills, and knowledge that students are expected to acquire at each grade level. The district will provide teachers with the necessary time, resources, and professional development opportunities to conduct curriculum research and evaluation, pilot and implement new instructional strategies and programs, and continuously improve the curriculum based on student needs and best practices within the allocated budget approved by the Board of Education.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments, or changes for that one? Mrs. Burton?
Just a thank you for continually tweaking this and frankly all the policies that we go through, but this one had some wordsmithing that we did over the last few meetings on this one. So thank you for getting it so it's well written.
My pleasure.
It's looking good. All right, that will be also put on for the next regular meeting for a vote. Second reading. Item 9C, first reading of Board Policy IG, Counseling and Student Assistance. And, geez, Mrs. O'Brien.
That would be me.
Yep.
Board Policy IG, Instructional Program. The N is still missing mysteriously from counseling, so we will add that. And student assistance. This policy is also from 1988 and was reviewed 10 years ago. So we rewrote this, and it reads, Students will have access to school-based guidance and counseling services to support their academic and social emotional well-being. These services will focus on identifying individual student needs, coordinating and providing the appropriate resources that address and support the personal and social emotional challenges that affect learning.
Nice. Any questions or comments? That looks really great. Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien,
Thank you.
for getting these up to date. 1988's a long time ago, so they needed updating.
We'll update.
Yeah, we updated them. We're not getting rid of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that the second use of social emotional needs a hyphen.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. All right, we're going to go ahead and put this on for the second reading at the next a regular board meeting in February. And that finishes us up. Typically, we have a time if any board member would like or wish to speak or have anything to say. Is there anybody who would like to address the board this evening? Oh, it's very quiet. Wow. Nothing this evening. Okay. We like it that way. That's good. Everybody's happy. I just want to thank Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Junta for putting together all the items this evening, not only for our guests who swore us in, but for us. I see we have some swag bags of our own, and just want to thank the district for recognizing us this evening. We really feel that. And, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Bradford. I just want to take the opportunity to thank Mrs. Bradford, Mrs. Frank, and Mrs. Acosta for their willingness to step into these roles, which sometimes are somewhat difficult. But I know you guys are going to do a great job. Thank you so much for your willingness to do these. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate those thoughtful words. We know what we have to do. We'll get it all done, that's for sure. But thank you to everybody for making the evening so nice tonight. It was great to have the robotics here, and it was so wonderful to be sworn in and then to have the election of officers and just have board recognition all the way around. So we got lots of warm fuzzies tonight. So we appreciate everything that you do for us. So thank you. And with that, I think I wish everybody a beautiful evening and have a nice night tonight. We're adjourned. Thank you.